the goods from the wood.
Hot damn! So I'm sitting here with comedian Carter Glascock. Carter, I actually got a book this week that might interest you. It's called Alabama Scoundrels.
Ooh. Outlaws, Pirates, Bandits, and Bushwhackers.
By Kelly Kazik and Will Elric. And it's just a collection of stories about various pirates and, ne'er-do-wells of the late 1800s in the state that Carter and I both hail from. And there was one story in here that was kind of so interesting to me that I actually had to read more about it. So I actually went to the Pasadena Public Library and checked out a second book, The Life and Crimes of Railroad Bill, legendary African-American desperado.
Ooh.
And this was a story that I just thought was very cool and something to put at the beginning of a podcast that's all about crime, because I don't know where else this would go. And people don't even necessarily think of Alabama as the Wild West, but 1895 is the high era of train robberies all across the country. So most people, when you think about a train robbery, maybe think about Texas or New Mexico, California, but this was happening everywhere, and it was definitely happening in southern Alabama.
And the era of train robbers.
The era of train robbers, and really the last era of magic in a way. So I'm going to...
utilize magic in these train robberies?
Kind of. Yeah, a little bit, potentially. So... in the 1890s, railroads across the country were under heavy assault from bandits. The kinds of high-risk, high-reward heists that would come to be popularized in Hollywood movies of the 19-teens and 1920s. And in order to combat this scourge, railroad lines were heavily policed by a private army of detectives and guards.
I'm just imagining like a Pecos Bill-esque character like waddling down like the aisles, just kind of spitting into a spittoon,
totally,
and eyeballing everybody.
That's this time. This is really the kind of the tail end of Western expansion, and this is the Wild West. This is what, when most people think of the Wild West, what they think of.
I know I'm new to Los Angeles, but Western set in Alabama, do I smell a screenplay?
This is, I can't believe this isn't already a movie, and I desperately want to make this into one because it's got so many cool elements.
We can do it. We're in LA, baby.
Let's do it. We'll start working on it. So,
I need a job.
Yeah, hire Carter if you're out here,
please.
So the public opinion of railroads and railroad owners at the time was resoundingly negative. So this is what I was talking about. You have people like Leland Stanford. The owners of these railroad companies are just seen as these rapacious bastards, and this is what would give rise, obviously, to the era of Roosevelt in 1901. Teddy Roosevelt comes into office quite by accident after the death of McKinley, but very much with the intention of publicly shaming these motherfuckers. But this is like where anger towards them is boiling. So this is when Jesse James really, even though he was dead, he became kind of a folk hero during this time. But anyway, so I set all this up just to say, like, the time period, you've got trains loaded with money and goods crisscrossing the country. Usually most of the companies will have heavily armed people on board, and there's constantly like gunfights and people stealing shit off of trains.
Yeah.
And so this is the absolute height of that. So winter of 1894, a train is traveling south along the Louisville and Nashville lines in South Alabama between Flomaton and Mobile. Flomaton, you might remember from our Send in the Clowns episode with Robert Yasamoro, where they had a rash of clown sightings in 2016. So that's the last creepy thing that happened in Flomaton. But so this train is tooting along, and Brakeman, who's the guy who rides the back of the train, notices a black man with a rifle across his lap sleeping in between two of the cars. So this is a freight train. There's not supposed to be passengers on it, and he comes upon this guy just kind of like sleeping in between the cars, and he calls for help. And him and the other crewmen kind of like creep up on the guy, and then they just throw him off of the train.
Oh, Jesus.
And so they see the guy, start to roll and tumble, as you might imagine. But then suddenly he rolls into a firing position and shoots out the lantern from the brakeman's hand before disappearing into the woods.
Whoa.
Just a
How
badass.
is that not a scene in a movie?
I don't know how this isn't a movie. And I don't know how there isn't more information about this online, because it's like, I picked stuff from like the Encyclopedia of Alabama, a little bit of stuff from Wikipedia, stuff to like kind of fill in the holes left by the books. But like overall, this seems to be sort of an unknown tale, but it's so cool.
That's so badass.
Your first scene, you just get this shadowy figure. Nobody knows his name. Nobody knows who he is. They just know he's sleeping and he's a problem. So they throw him off, and he John Wicks them, like just does a barrel roll and shoots the lantern out of the guy's hand. And so they're like, oh shit. And the train goes off and he disappears into the woods. So this guy, who is known alternately throughout history as either, here's all of his names, Morris Slater, Morris Salter, Wild Bill McCoy, William Brown, and Will Barker. None of these might be his name. Like, we actually don't have any concrete proof of who this dude is. All we know is that he for sure existed and that he had basically a 1.5 year run of some of the craziest crimes I've ever read about, and that history would know him as Railroad Bill.
Railroad Bill. I mean, like he pretty much like cornered the market on railroad robberies. If you're known as Railroad Bill, you know.
Yeah, well, that was actually what L&N Railroad started referring to him as. They're actually the ones, like so many of the best names for criminals. It's the cops or the people chasing them that come up with the name, you know, and then they just roll with it. So they were the ones calling Railroad Bill.
Well, if it ain't another case of being robbed by old Railroad Bill.
Yeah.
Right into the spittoon.
Right into the spittoon. His true name, location of his birth, and details of his family have been debated since his criminal career ended in 1896. What is known is that at some point, according to the Montgomery Advertiser from the time, he traveled with a circus and he learned showmanship, including sleight of hand and contortion.
On top of marksmanship.
Yeah, and apparently also on top of, he's an amazing shot on top of all of this.
Jeez.
So the contortion thing is interesting because in a lot of descriptions of him, everybody described him, he's 5'6", so he's not crazy tall. He's an average height for a man of his time, really. But everybody talks about he was double jointed. And so his neck was like very long and he could like kind of move in like he just moved in a strange way.
Wow.
Everybody talked about that. And it's from the circus, apparently. Like, I don't know if he trained himself to be a contortionist or if he just was naturally like that. But that's one thing that they talk about with this guy. So he joined
any card, and then it's just a gun pointed at you being like, give me your money.
Right. Well, and apparently like throughout his career, he was known to just like come up to kids and be like, hey, pull a quarter from out under their ear, and like he just like does magic tricks with them and shit. I'm like, this guy rules.
Thanks, mister.
Yeah, and then he just murders a cop in their face.
Wow,
that was cool. So he joins a turpentine company in South Carolina. So if you're listening, you don't know, turpentine is a mineral oil.
I was about to ask, what the hell is turpentine?
It's a mineral oil. It's used in painting. It's used in wood treatment. It's an essential oil, just an industrial oil. And the way you harvest it is by essentially hacking into a pine tree, and as soon as you cut through the bark of a pine tree, and it starts emitting this oil immediately. So there's these little baskets that just come down. So, and you still see today, if you travel in South Alabama, northern Florida, pine trees everywhere, and turpentine is still harvested there.
The history of essential oils. You know, you got like frankincense, and then turpentine, and then citrus mango.
And now mostly turpentine is used if you're painting a house and you're trying to get the paint out from under your fingernails. You just put some either turpentine or acetone on your hands. It'll dissolve it. But it's a dissolving agent is what it's used for.
I'll get a vat of it for the home.
Yeah. But you get it by harvesting it from pine trees. And you have to imagine like southern Alabama, pine forests, extremely humid, and you're harvesting an oil that is, with prolonged exposure, sort of noxious. Turpentine, it has a very, very strong smell. So people would often get nauseous harvesting this stuff, and it's just a miasma of shit. Always.
Great use of miasma.
Just working in the humidity and the smell of the turpentine. Like it's just a nasty way of living, but it's how a lot of people made their living in that time. So he's working in South Carolina, and then the firm he's with decides to move down to Baldwin County, Alabama. So that's how he gets from South Carolina, where they think he's maybe from, down to southern Alabama. So, contemporary reports from the men in the turpentine camps remember him as a profoundly athletic, top-notch laborer, and as an affable individual. So he's a chipper guy. He's a real nice guy, but he's also extremely athletic, as you could see by the fact that he was thrown off a fucking train and managed to do a barrel roll and shoot back at the guy.
Whoa.
Which is incredible. So they describe him as having light skin and standing between 5'6" and 5'7". And it's after he decides to leave the turpentine company that Bill's run really commences. So the people who threw him off the train, he's just like, fuck L&N. So for the rest of his life, just his whole existence is like, fuck you for throwing me off a train.
Yeah,
and it's like and again, back to the screenplay
or
thing.
not do that.
It's the perfect Coen Brothers-esque motivation, just like, oh, well, I wasn't going to kill you, but you threw me off a train. Just like what a good reason for a blood vendetta. You don't need anything like, oh, he didn't kill his kids. They didn't, do anything fucked up to his family. It's literally like, you threw me off a train.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to kill you.
It's like a Buster Scruggs-esque type of...
It really is.
Now, partner, where I come from, that just qualifies as downright disrespectful.
That's just impolite. You ought not be throwing people off a train.
So, kindly demeanor.
There's also this other story about his origin. So it's either that he hates the railroad, and there's this other story about his origin that a police officer in Birmingham asked to see his gun permit because he walked around with a rifle all the time. He just always had a huge gun, and later he would get like 3 more guns. So he's just like loaded all the time with weapons. And apparently a cop was just like, you have to have a permit for that. And he just started
like real sheepish, like, hey,
excuse me.
Hi.
Sir.
How are you? Just about the gun. I gotta ask.
I just figured I'd ask. I don't want to cause no. I don't want to cause a problem.
I saw you doing magic. It's very impressive.
Yeah. You'd like did a little magic trick. Ooh, cool. But yeah, so those are kind of the 2 competing origin stories for this guy. I like the you threw me off a train, I'm going to kill you sort of thing. So
that definitely has like a Western fable sense.
It's so good. Mm-hmm. So by January of 1895, Railroad Bill's criminal career had begun in earnest. He rounded up a gang near Bay Minette, Alabama, and they began to rob the L&N boxcars. So one member of the gang would stow away just before the train left the station, and then it would start rolling down the line, and then the stowaway would just start chucking shit off the boxcars, and then Railroad Bill and his gang would ride behind and pick them up as the stuff came flying off the train.
Like a well-oiled machine.
Yeah, exactly. So the L&N Railroad employees started noticing train cars arriving with their destinations with broken seals, missing contents, and it was during this first flurry of activity that Bill would wound several trainsmen. He commandeered a train and forced it out of the station, and he also, at some point, found time to threaten the life of Jim McKinney, L&N's superintendent of the Mobile and Montgomery division of the railway. So it was just like a list of just things, and then on top of that, he just stuck a gun in the face of the railroad boss and was like, I'll fucking kill you! So this guy...
not one to be trifled with.
No, hell no. So all the while, the prices of canned goods and lumber along the L&N Railroad plunged throughout 1895 as stolen items began to flood the markets and the turpentine camps throughout the woods of southern Alabama and northern Florida. Nice. So shit's going missing from the trains, and then it turns up for half price at the general store.
They go out back to get like the turpentine out of the back car, and like, it doesn't smell as much like shit back here as it normally does. Why is that?
He's not even stealing the turpentine. He's stealing like canned goods, cash, like all the other shit off the train. So the trains coming south are bringing in all the goods. That's what he's robbing. The trains going north are the ones carrying the turpentine out of there. So he's just stealing all of
he's
like
you keep the turpentine,
the general goods. So he's stealing. The big thing is like cash, canned food, and just mail bags, because at the time that's mail
still a pretty hot in demand item.
Yeah, because it's a lot of times full of cash.
Sure.
So that's even more money. So a persistent legend about Railroad Bill is that if police or the L&N security got too hot on his heels, he'd dispose of his stolen property on the doorsteps of random poor people living in the swamps and pine forests.
Nice.
So here's where his Robin Hood story starts.
I was say, yeah.
These are completely, it's one of those things where like this happened in 1895, so it's conspicuous as to whether or not that aspect is true, but it has definitely made its way into the Railroad Bill folklore. Mm-hmm. Like this is a thing people talk about him. Like people would just wake up on Sunday morning and there would just be a giant pile of vegetables and canned foods.
5 industrial vats of turpentine.
No, these people make turpentine. They're not looking for more turpentine.
I don't know why I'm hung up on turpentine.
He's giving them the good stuff.
That's awesome. I mean, he sounds like a stand-up guy, stand up every which way, I guess. So he's he can slink in between.
Yeah. So
stand at a cute 90-degree angle or something.
Right, yeah. He can just like fold down like Cirque du Soleil, like from the ceiling. March 6th, 1895, L&N security forces found Railroad Bill sleeping on top of a water tower in Hurricane Bayou near Bay Minette, Alabama. Before they could get the jump on him, Bill began firing at the posse before jumping from the top of the railroad tower onto a passing train.
Wow.
Railroad Bill made his way to the cab of the train where he took the engineer hostage, ordering him to speed up. So the posse is like, they start shooting at him, And he realizes the best way to get him to stop shooting at him, because it's the L&N company men, right? They're not going to shoot their own train conductor, is to get into the cab, because now they're not going to shoot the cab because they don't want to hit their guy. So he's basically just in the cab like, go, 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 go. And they stop shooting at him. But this is like the amazing part. So they stop firing, and then the train gets like several hundred yards away. The posse watches in amazement as Railroad Bill gets off the train and then starts shooting at them again. And the gunfight lasts until Railroad Bill ran out of ammunition and escaped into the swamplands.
Whoa.
So he sat there and emptied all of his clips, just everything at them. He could have so easily just gotten away on the train, but he was like, "You threw me off a damn train!" And then he started shooting back at him.
Seems like whoever would play him in this movie adaptation, that is going to happen.
Yes.
Whoever would play him that would get like 5 minutes of screen time. The stunt guy would get the majority of the screen time.
Oh my God. There's so much crazy shit happening here. So the encounter was published widely in newspapers, and it led to the other enduring legend about Railroad Bill. And that is that Railroad Bill can turn into animals.
Now, this is true.
So various folktales have Bill evading capture by turning into a dog or a bird or a fox or a black lamb. According to one story, a sheriff in Mississippi chased Railroad Bill into some bushes. The sheriff began kicking the bushes, and a fox ran out. The sheriff shot both barrels of his shotgun at the animal, but missed entirely. A second after the shot, the fox turns around and begins to laugh like a human being at the sheriff.
I love it that it's like that's how the folklore goes, where it's like he didn't just get away and then a random dog walked out. It was just like he turned into a dog.
Into a fox.
Oh shit, he's a fox.
Oh
now
my God.
he turned and the fox turned into a dragonfly.
Yeah.
He truly is a master of disguise. It's like, no, he got away and now you're just shooting at animals.
But I just love that, like, this was the last time where a story like that could even be plausible. 1895, we're at the dawn of the 20th century. We'll be on the moon in 74 years, and people are turning into foxes.
Until the 1990s with the prominence of Animorphs.
Oh, that's true. He could have been an Animorph.
You know, I'll tell you, those books are non-fictional.
Was an Animorph.
Those books are non-fictional. That's why they're directed at children, because you can't lie to kids.
So L&N now has a $350 reward out for Railroad Bill. On April 6, 1895, exactly 1 month after Railroad Bill's escape from Hurricane Bayou, a posse of railroad company detectives tracked Bill to a barn just outside Bay Minette. A firefight ensues, of course, because that's Railroad Bill's thing, and Railroad Bill killed Baldwin County Deputy Sheriff James H. Stewart. So now he's a cop killer.
Jimmy Stewart?
He killed Jimmy Stewart. Well, goddamn, I didn't know Railroad Bill was going to be shoot me in the head.
I had no idea the guy could turn into a giraffe. Yeah. Well, now he's turned into a Dalmatian.
Oh my God!
Oh, he's contorting himself. Oh, when I look up at him, I think to myself, oh, maybe we should just let him go. You know, it's like kind of a pensive Jimmy Stewart for you.
So he kills Jimmy Stewart, and now the reward is up to $500.
Yeah, which in today's time is like, $600.
Yeah. So Escambia County, Alabama Sheriff Ed McMillan vows to capture or kill Railroad Bill.
I said Ed McMahon. It's like Jimmy Stewart and Ed.
Yeah, they're on the case.
Yes, there he is.
So at this point, Railroad Bill writes a letter to the newspaper that says, "I wish you hadn't made that statement because I love you, Mr. Ed, and I don't want to kill you."
Wow, that's
he's
ice cold.
Taunting the cops. He's like, "I wish you hadn't said you were going to kill me because you motherfuckers threw me off a train and I'm going to kill you now."
Oof.
On July 3rd, 1895, McMillan and the posse were sneaking up on Railroad Bill's hideout when suddenly they were caught unawares by Railroad Bill, and he shot the sheriff directly into the heart before escaping into the woods.
Wow.
So now he's killed a cop and the sheriff
in the heart too.
Shot him straight up in the chest. Like
he liked him, but it's like,
I love you, Mr. Ed, but those motherfuckers threw me off a train. Don't ever forget.
But have you ever shot a cop? It's the terrible Mr. Ed.
So now the reward is raised to $1,250. $1,250.
I believe that is 1 month's rent out here in North Hollyweird.
So that sum was sufficient to attract bounty hunters, law enforcement officers, railroad detectives, Pinkerton agents from as far away as Chicago, Texas, and Indiana. So now just everybody like, $1,200, and everyone's like, I'm getting that bounty.
Every roustabout.
They're all coming to Mobile. Like, they're all coming to South Alabama for this prize.
And they stayed there.
Yeah, that's why it's like that down there. This is the origin story of the Redneck Riviera, actually. By August 2nd, the Montgomery Advertiser was reporting that those hunting the fugitive had become a, quote, small army loaded for bear.
Oh.
The cagey Desperado, nevertheless, could not be found. All the while, he's robbing trains and still reportedly selling goods to impoverished people for lower prices than the local merchant shops. Unfortunately, many innocent people soon found themselves paying a heavy price for Railroad Bill's crimes. On July 16th, the Pine Belt News in Bruton, Alabama, ran a headline that says, quote, "The wrong man shot for Railroad Bill's crimes." So now they're just shooting anybody. It's like, are you black? You got a gun? You're gonna die.
Oh boy.
Yeah. So this is where the Alabama-ness of the situation reveals itself.
That sounds like Alabama.
You're like, oh god, this is no good. So people are just getting their asses kicked in the streets because people are so hungry for this reward, and also they're racist on top of that. So Railroad Bill's trail was located in Escambia County, Alabama on July 29th, 1895, and a posse followed it into the swamplands of Murder Creek.
What a place for a shootout.
Which I've been
Was it called that before?
Yes, I've been to Murder Creek. So when you're driving down I-65 going towards the beach, you always see the sign that says Murder Creek. And I'd said for years I wanted to stop and do an Instagram picture out there, and I finally had the foresight to do it the last time I did a show in New Orleans. So I knew it was coming up, so I pulled over and I got a sign to me. I'll put it on our Twitter. We're at the Goods Pod. But I have been to Murder Creek, but I didn't know about any of this. So they chase him into Murder Creek. It's just a big, ungodly swamp between Bruton and Castleberry. So for 5 days, the posse, which swelled in number to nearly 100 men, sought the outlaws' capture. In one incident, he exchanged shots with one of the members of the posse before escaping. In another, he got the drop on two posse members before escaping. And in another, he killed one of the bloodhounds that was chasing him and escaped. So the 100 guys can't catch this dude at all. He is so cagey.
I mean, 1 minute he's a butterfly, next minute he's a bullfrog, the next minute, next minute he's like, I'm sure like his posse who he was with, he's like sitting there counting the money. 1 minute is like a three-toed sloth, and then he's counted again as like a garden snake, and then one of his posse members is like, does this wear on you? Like, how do you feel, Bill? And he just, coincidentally, he had turned into a dog, and he was like, rough. Oh, that was a long way to go for a rough joke, but yeah,
I appreciated it.
Oh yeah.
See, I just think if he does have the ability to turn into any animal, it's just funny of just like some grizzled bounty hunter from Texas just climbing around in some ungodly, dismal swamp down in Alabama, just roasting. And this is the middle of the summer too. The summer of 1895. There's barely soap. There's certainly not baby powder for any grundles or girl. It's gross. Swamp foot, swamp
Grumbly
ass.
grundles.
And I just imagine a guy just like, with his long rifle walking through the woods and stuff, just being like, oh, this sucks. And just turning around and being like, hey, wait a minute. Hey, camels are not indigenous to here. Oh, God, it's Railroad Bill. And then he just explodes into a bunch of bats. Like, this guy rules.
Reforms as a polar bear, and then it's like,
it's like
Jesus
Lost.
Christ.
The polar bear in Lost is Railroad Bill.
Oh yeah.
So the Summer of Bill, of course, is being printed in newspapers, and it's around this time that an African-American folk ballad emerges that celebrates his exploits, titled Railroad Bill. The ballad usually has different lyrics depending on the singer, but it's always with a bad man theme. So Joan Baez has covered this song. Just saw Andrew Bird did a version of this song. Like, there's a bunch of contemporary artists that did it, and then a bunch of people in the 20s did it. So here's some sample lyrics. Railroad Bill, he never worked and he never will. And it's ride, 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 Railroad Bill. And then the next line, Railroad Bill's a mighty mean man. He shot the light out of the poor brakeman's hand. And then the next line, Railroad Bill's a coming home soon. Killed McMillan by the light of the moon. Like, this just sounds badass. Railroad Bill up on a hill, lighting a cigar with a $10 bill.
Oh, hell yeah.
This is like the original, Bo Diddley got a cobra snake for a necktie, got a house by the roadside, made a rattlesnake hide. Who do you love? So no one saw anything of Bill after he escaped Murder Creek in July of 1895. That is until March 7th, 1896, when a light-skinned, 5'7" black man with a limp ambled into Tidmore and Ward's General Store right around sundown in Atmore, Alabama. The man bought some cheese and some crackers, and he sat on a barrel to eat them. The owner...
Tasty treat.
Yeah, it's a good last meal. The owner recognized Railroad Bill. There was a posse outside that spotted him too. Atmore Constable Leonard McGowan entered the store and fired on the outlaw, fatally wounding him in the back. As he fell off the barrel, the owner shot him with his shotgun that he kept under the counter. 2 other men then entered the store and began firing at his corpse.
Jesus.
He was extremely dead.
Yeah.
This is just like people just be like, hey, I want the 1200, just unloading into this guy.
Turns out they had just been unloading into a gecko. That's what you hope that's how it'd go out.
That wasn't a man. That was a Komodo dragon. What the hell? So the body of Railroad Bill was embalmed and transported by officers to Montgomery, Alabama for official identification. Officers put it on public display. Hundreds of people paid 25 cents each to see Bill. City authorities condemned the practice, and so the body was taken to Pensacola, where it was again placed on public display at a price.
Ugh, that's morbid.
Yeah, and then literally the government of Pensacola was like, yeah, this seems kind of gross. So they moved it to Mobile, and they did it again.
Mobile, the home of all the murderers and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they just keep moving this body around, and they keep making money off of Bill.
Brings it kind of a new meaning to the term flogging a dead horse. You know what I mean?
It really is. They transport it back to Pensacola on March 30th, 1896, and give Bill a Christian interment in the African-American section of St. John Cemetery. The ceremony was attended by the mayor and various dignitaries of the city, which I think just means like, you know, it's like him like getting tough on crime, like him just being like, yeah, we killed this guy. I think that's why. It wasn't like a celebratory thing, but it was just kind of weird that like the mayor was there for the burial of this outlaw.
Guy's a legend, so it's like, you know, I guess they got to make a whole song and dance about it.
Right. Like the mayor wants to get the good, like he wants to get the Railroad Bill bump.
Sure. Yeah.
So the grave was unmarked and it was lost until it was rediscovered in 2012 using original interment records. So at that point in 2012, a headstone was placed on the grave to mark the last resting place of this American desperado. So he's buried there in Pensacola, Florida.
Wow.
And this is a little epilogue. On July 6th, 1957, a 15-year-old high school student named Paul McCartney attended a concert at a garden party behind St. Peter's Church in Liverpool, England. The entertainment
I've
for the
heard of Paul McCartney from Liverpool.
The entertainment of this evening was provided by a local skiffle band called the Quarrymen, led by another high school student, 17-year-old John Lennon. One of the songs they played that night was Railroad Bill. Yeah. So Paul McCartney apparently saw John Lennon playing Railroad Bill. And he's like, oh, I know that tune. Like that, because it's a famous song, I guess.
Oh, you know, he was singing a song about how he was lighting up cigars with a $10 bill. And all
shooting cops. It's pretty cool. And then he turned into a bunch of bats.
Well, we just thought, you know, we thought that he's a desperado, you know, he's a real... he's turning into, you know, to wombats and all this.
Wombats.
He's turning into wombats and he's turning into, you know, to striped lizards and what have you. And me and Paul just thought it was a lovely tune. We thought it was a good tune, you know. Well, that's right, you know.
Oh my God. Oh, so that's Railroad Bill. That was
It's a hell of a story.
Yeah, man. Let's make a movie.
I'm telling you. You know, before anyone hears this, we got tonight. Let's hammer out this screenplay.
I think so. And you know what's funny? All those names and this is why I was kind of ambiguous in my wording of that last part about him getting shot all those times. All those names I read at the beginning, Wild Bill McCoy, Morris, Slater, those are the names that various people that saw the body were like, oh, I know that guy. That's Morris Slater. I used to work with him at the Turpentine camp. They're like, oh, that's Bill McCoy. Like, I remember him getting in a fight at my bar. So there's not even any proof that the guy they killed
is him.
Like, they took him to Birmingham to be identified, but the fuck do they know?
Yeah, right.
There's no photo.
Like, that's that.
The only photo of this guy, and I'll put it on Twitter, as grisly as it is him dead on a plank. That's it.
Jesus.
The death photo is the only photo that exists of Railroad Bill, and there's nothing to say that he didn't either die of his wounds in that swamp or got away maybe to Texas or California or something like that. But it's ambiguous. Or, like at the end of Jurassic Park, he turned into a bird.
Yeah.
Like the T-Rex and flew away.
I'd like to think that he made it out west. He made it out California way, such as we both have now. And he's out here somewhere, and he got a job at Trader Joe's, and he found a pretty affordable place in like Burbank or something.
Yeah. He took that ransom money, the $12.50, and got 1 month rent in Burbank. Anyway, that's the Tale of Railroad Bill.